Morning, everybody. I want to thank everybody for being here and the members behind me here on the steps. We are here on June the 4th and have just 26 days before our state budget is due. Throughout the halls of this Capitol, there's a persistent conversation about what to do with the surplus and the rainy day fund that have accumulated due to prudent and sound budget practices of the past. And while many may rightly quibble with the philosophical idea that we have too much money in surplus, the fascination with what to do with that money remains. And right now we're faced with two competing visions for what we should do with the surplus dollars that we currently have. Governor Shapiro and the Democrat leaders in the House and the Senate would have you believe that money is best spent in creating more government. Let's be very clear what their vision is about. Their vision is about creating more government and increasing costs. In creating new programs that will then create recurring costs that will need to be sustained well after the surplus and even potentially the rainy day fund are exhausted by some estimates within the next 2 to 5 years. On the other hand, Senate Republicans, with a veto-proof vote in that chamber, which included half of the Democratic caucus, voted to cut taxes for all Pennsylvanians, to use the surplus money that we've accumulated with smart budgeting practices and to return that investment to the very taxpayers directly to them. If we were to spend down our surplus, then I agree, and we wholeheartedly endorse not just the Senate plan, but any proposal that would return taxpayer investments directly back into the pockets of Pennsylvania taxpayers. This morning, we will be introducing the House version of the personal income tax cut and the electricity gross receipts tax elimination legislation. The legislature should not give into the temptation to simply grow more government. News reports have been rife with discussions about how our budget has bloated over $20 billion in less than 20 years. With Biden inflation continues to be a problem, we reject the view of the Democratic leaders that the reserves, the surplus, and the budgetary security that we have built through responsible governing as lawmakers, that is not a license to double down on governmental bloat. If we were to use the money we have now, we call on all lawmakers to join us in recognizing it is not our money to spend and balloon into more government. It is the taxpayers' money. And we must reject the notion that it is fiscally sound to add unsustainable and recurring costs into the taxpayers and the Pennsylvanians who are already paying more and getting less from government. We believe that this money comes from the taxpayers and it must be returned to the taxpayers. As Republican leaders in the House, we've endorsed the plan passed by the Senate. As part of our budgetary priorities, we demand to see that bill called up by the House Democrats as passed with an overwhelming, and I'll stress it again, a bipartisan and veto-proof vote that it received just a few months ago. And let us be equally clear. House Democrat leaders should not load this bill up or play parliamentary games like they have in the past with many of the other proposals. Right now is the time to govern in what is supposed to be the heat of budget discussions. The contrast being offered here could never be clearer. I recently read an opinion piece that argued we should be helping regular, everyday Pennsylvanians through the use of our budgetary surplus, and I couldn't agree more. The tax cuts that are being proposed and we support will help the needy, they'll help the middle class, and they will help small businesses, and they will help many of the people that government has forgotten. As we go into budget discussions, we stand in lockstep with our Senate Republican colleagues in returning this taxpayer money back to everyday Pennsylvanians, the taxpayers who sent it here. And to return and invest in Pennsylvanians have made in us by reinvesting in them when they need it the most. Keep in mind, personal income tax cut means a gigantic small business tax cut. Cutting the gross receipts tax for electricity means major savings for every family and business who continue to pay too much for energy policy. Think about how much money can be reinvested in our economy if we let the taxpayers have their money back. Our priority is to leave it to them and to use their tax dollars to support their families, support small businesses, and continue to stimulate the economy. On the other hand, the other side simply wants to grow government and spend down those reserves while adding to the recurring costs of government for taxpayers going forward each and every year. That is irresponsible, and that's something that we cannot support. I will turn it over to Whip O'Neill, the prime sponsor of the bill.
Thank you, Leader Cutler, and thank you to the Republican members who have joined us here today. Our message is simple. We have a chance to provide immediate and direct relief from inflation for the people across Pennsylvania. As costs continue to rise, the government should be getting out of people's wallets and letting them keep their hard-earned money. Now is the time to invest in working families instead of government. We are proud to join Senate Republicans and to fully support historic tax cuts for every single Pennsylvanian by cutting the personal income tax and eliminating the gross receipts tax on electricity bills. The best part is, this proposal is not even partisan. This historic tax cut, as we heard from Leader Cutler, has already overwhelmingly passed the Senate in bipartisan fashion just a few weeks ago. And the House Republicans are happy to announce that we will be introducing identical legislation today in the House of Representatives. So when it comes to directly helping every Pennsylvanian, House Democrats have options, but no excuses. It's time for them to act. Let's be very clear. We're not talking about tax breaks for just the privileged few or for massive corporations. This plan would mean more money in every single paycheck across this Commonwealth and would immediately reduce electricity bills for every single consumer. This proposal would reduce personal income tax by 10% for working Pennsylvanians. That alone would mean over $1,000 in tax savings for a family of four between now and the next year. Think about what a boost in a working mom's paycheck would mean for her family, or what a reduction in electricity bill would mean for a retired couple. We have the chance to act now to immediately change the lives of every Pennsylvanian. Let's not let this opportunity pass by. Let's invest in families over government and pass tax cuts now. Thank you. And here's Chairman Kale to say a few words.
Thank you, Whip O'Neill. I'm proud to be the co-prime of this legislation of these tax cuts. You know, the contrast couldn't be clearer between what Democrats want to do and what Republicans want to do. What Democrats' vision is and what our vision is. Democrats, what do they propose? How to spend more of your money. How to spend more of the taxpayers' monies. What do we propose? We propose that taxpayers themselves know how to spend their money best. It's that simple. It's the tale of two visions. Who do you want controlling your money? Do you want to control your own money, or do you want Harrisburg bureaucrats dictating where your money goes? The governor always talks about losing to other states, losing to Ohio, jobs going other places, people moving other places. Well, if you look at the places where there is growth, you'll also see competitive tax policies. In Pennsylvania, if we want to start winning, if we want to deliver opportunities for family-sustaining jobs and prosperity for working families, we have to change how we tax people. You know, it's interesting because we agree with this. The Senate clearly agrees with this. And I think you could probably make an argument, judging by how the governor campaigned a couple of years ago, that he at least on his face agrees with this. But House Democrats can't seem to give money back to Pennsylvanians. They want to spend it. They want to direct it. It's not right. It's not appropriate. Another part of this legislation that we need to talk about as well is the gross receipt taxes and that we're cutting out of the utility bills. This is great for families across the board. It'll cut everybody's utility bills, but it'll also provide opportunities for family-sustaining jobs, because it'll cut bills of large manufacturers and job creators, making Pennsylvania more competitive. Let's get out there. Let's make Pennsylvania more competitive. Let's start winning here in the Commonwealth. Next up is Secretary White to finish this off.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Over the last 3 years, we have seen the highest cost for consumers in Pennsylvania history, as high inflation is hitting the pockets of every hardworking Pennsylvanian. The Biden administration promised that high inflation was temporary and would soon return to a normal level. That promise has not been kept. Instead, I still see the same issues facing the people in my district when it comes to the cost to buy necessities like food, which has increased nearly 30%, and the cost of electricity to keep the lights on or heat and cool people's homes. That's increased on an average of 25% across this Commonwealth. The same can be said for the cost of gas at the fuel pump, where the average cost for a gallon of gas is 50% higher than the day that President Biden took office. With the continued rise in costs, a surprise expense can be catastrophic for a family's finances. Pennsylvanians are living in fear that a broken dishwasher, the dreaded check engine light coming on in their car, or any unexpected cost in this era of high inflation will force working families to choose between taking an unimaginable, unmanageable debt or going without necessities. And what does Governor Shapiro propose to address this growing crisis for working families across our state? He proposes a budget that increases the costs of government. The governor raises expenses that spends dry our surplus in 5 years and is pushing an energy plan that raises already skyrocketing electricity costs for the average household. The House Democrat majority has unsurprisingly followed in lockstep with our governor on a path towards burning through Pennsylvania's surplus by spending your hard-earned money on his unaffordable Democrat wish list that leaves the middle class behind. But Senate Republicans, along with my House Republican colleagues, Representative Tim O'Neill and Josh Kale, they've introduced legislation to put more money in everyone's pocket. This plan eliminates the gross receipts tax on electricity and cuts the personal income tax by 10%, returning over $3 billion to Pennsylvania families this year alone. We are here this morning to be the voice of the hardworking people of this state, who too often are left out of the conversation while being left to foot the bill. Democrats in Harrisburg continue spending and propose even more future spending of your hard-earned money on an endless number of government programs that do not benefit working and middle-class people. These tax cuts, which passed the Senate with overwhelming bipartisan support, are a solution designed to provide much-needed financial relief to the backbone of our Commonwealth, hardworking class people. Thank you very much, and at this time, I'll turn it back over to Leader Cutler.
Thank you, Secretary White. Happy to take any questions regarding the current legislative calendar or the budget process itself. I'll defer to the prime sponsors on any particular issues on the bill. Yeah, Jackson.
So with these tax cuts, it would reduce the state's revenue, right? So I guess where would House Republicans want to see those cuts coming from?
Well, I think when you look at some of the cuts, I think it's important to highlight the areas where government itself is not already working well. We heard from several secretaries through the budgetary hearings that they have programs that don't work. That'd be a good starting point. Additionally, Chairman Kale's been doing policy hearings on program integrity, which will further highlight additional programs that will not work. But I think when you look at the entirety of the policy, the goal is to get more money into individuals' pockets, taxpayers' pockets, return that money, and they will spend it here because that is what has consistently happened. We've seen our revenues go up, and I expect that to continue. So you will, in essence, make the pie itself bigger. Other questions? Yep.
I guess, what have House Democratic leaders said about this? Have they said that they're going to oppose it or that they're against this? Have they said it's something that they can work into a budget plan?
Well, they haven't calendared it yet. So I think that's very important. They ultimately run the calendar and what does or does not come up on the floor. So I think you could have a conversation with them where they might be at. However, half their Senate colleagues did vote for it. Other questions? All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate everybody being here.